There's a pretty one, Ulysses. There it is.
Hello BookTube, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Welcome back to my channel. Here I am with a page 112 tag, try a chapter tag mashup. I've done one of these before with a belabored, over-explained introduction, so I'm going to cut right to the chase, or at least my version thereof. This is a follow-up video to my book haul revisit. I'm still going to withhold the author and title from you until the end because I just think it's more fun that way. But you have seen me hold these books up in that book haul revisit to say that I was going to do something like this with them. In this tag, I am going to do the typical page 112 test for 4 books. I usually do 3.
Whoa. I do go on, don't I? So I am almost finished editing this sucker, and it's going to be like 37 minutes long. Who wants to watch that? Maybe 3 of you. So I'm going to strip out a whole bunch of my faltering ramblings and just give you the skinny, okay? This is a mashup of the page 112 tag and the try a chapter tag. I like to marry them because the joy of the page 112 tag is that you're looking at a page and evaluating the writing on a page farther into the book. I like the try a chapter tag because you're reading a longer section with which to assess are you interested and so on. But it's typically the original try a chapter tag is just the first chapter. Well, that's the part of the book that the editor and the author fusses over the most, and then everybody slacks off. So trying something farther in. So I do page 112 and then I read a longer section around that same part of the book. Okay? That's enough for an introduction. There's links to other videos if you want. And I am also going to cut out all of my reactions to each page 112 at length. I'm just going to cut it out. You don't have time. I don't even have time to finish editing. So instead I'm going to insert a very concise wrap-up of my thoughts and rankings and showing you the books to get this down to under 30 minutes at least. And everything after that where I do the try a chapter portion of this mashup, it's short enough that I'm not going to touch it, but boy, I needed to skim off a lot of the digressive flatulence of this first part, so let's go back.
Book number 1. He beamed, expansive now, into his stride. He had decided that she was looking more as though she followed what he was proposing. Almost a parody. You'd have to have him wearing a waistcoat and watch chain, and that suit, or something similar. The voice, the pronunciation, the mannerisms. It could work, could it? Just conceivably, said Delia Canning, we might consider a single program. As I say, possibly. I can't promise at this stage. She rose, she smiled, a smile that those alert to the surface codes of her trade would have interpreted as meaning absolutely nothing. Henry was not alert. He decided she was really quite an intelligent young woman after all. I'm so glad you're keen on the idea. Let me know when you'd like to talk again. Next time you must lunch with me at my club. When he had gone, she stared again at his proposal. No, his letter, his self-important letter, which would have been dismissed had not the mention of Marion Clark's name caught Delia's eye. And Marion Clark had done such a good job on the flat. And Delia felt she couldn't bat Marion Clark's uncle aside out of hand, this Lord What's-it. She had her secretary check him out. It seemed that he was indeed, or had been, a well-known academic. Suppose I'll have to see him, she had thought. Academics are 2 a penny, but never mind. Waste of half an hour, that's all. A certain awful appeal. The voice, the manner, everything. You'd be sticking your neck out a mile putting him on. People would love him or hate him. A provocation. Risky, oh yes, but just might be a winner. Take a chance? Yes? No? Book number 2. By some black humorist. Because that's who the black humorists are, of course. The Henny Youngmans and the Milton Berles breaking them up down there in the Fontainebleau. And with what? Stories of murder and mutilation. "Help!" cries the woman running along the sand at Miami Beach. "Help! My son, the doctor is drowning!" Ha ha ha! Only it is my son the patient, lady. And is he drowning? Doctor, get these people off my ass, will you please? The macabre is very funny on the stage, but not to live it, thank you. So just tell me how and I'll do it. Just tell me what and I'll say it right to their faces. Scat, Sophie. Fuck off, Jack. Go away from me already. I mean, here's a joke for you, for instance. 3 Jews are walking down the street, my mother, my father, and me. It's this past summer, just before I am to leave on my vacation. We have had our dinner. You got a piece of fish? My father asked the waiter in the fancy French restaurant I take them to show I am grown up? Oui, monsieur, we have. All right, give me a piece of fish, says my father, and make sure it's hot. We have had our dinner, and afterward, chewing on my titrelac for relief of gastric hyperacidity, I walk a ways with them before putting them in a taxi for the Port Authority bus terminal. Immediately, my father starts in about how I haven't come to visit in 5 weeks, ground I thought we two had already covered in the restaurant, while my mother was whispering to the waiter to make sure her big boy's piece of fish, that's me, folks, was well done. And now I am going away for a whole month, and all in all, when do they ever see their own son? Book number 3. The first third of this is written, you'll see it on the screen, but it's written like dialogue in a play or something. Pathologist, again, very probably. Coroner, frowning. The deceased was 16 years of age. Was he in the habit of getting drunk? P.C. Wybrow, circumspectly, the deceased's parents not being present. I believe he was, sir. With all respect to the bereaved, I believe he took after his father. Coroner, Mr. Parr is a heavy drinker? Mr. Crick, are you able to substantiate this? My father. Coroner, Mr. Crick? My father. He likes a drop, sir. Coroner, Mr. Parr is a known drinker, and Mr. Parr is a signalman and level crossing keeper. And why did these facts, so the coroner might have pursued had his business not been in another area, not strike constant trepidation into the hearts of the motorists, cyclists, and other road users in the habit of relying on Jack Parr's gates, not to mention the footplate men, guards, and passengers of the Great Eastern Railway? And why had the railway authorities never got to hear of the unfortunate weakness of their employee, fueled as it was, though the coroner didn't know this, by illicit liquor conveyed on their own rolling stock? For the simple reason that it was Mrs. Parr, and this was common knowledge too, P.C. Wybrow might have added, who manned the gates and the signals during the periods of her husband's debility. It was she who heaved back and forth, as to the manner born, the clanking signal switches. It was she who received and passed on the telegraph messages from Apton to Newydd, from Apton to Wansham, that the 9:10 to Guildsey was 12 minutes late, that a goods train had been rescheduled. It was she who on icy winter dawns unfroze with the aid of a blow lamp the hinges of the level crossing gates while her husband lay snoring off the effects of a hard night's Kentucky bourbon. Finally, book number 4. Then Dotty came out, dabbing her nose with a tissue. She and Lance never looked at each other, and then they were gone. An hour later, the Pontiac returned, but only Lance got out. What had Dotty told Lance? Why did Dotty have to move out? Would Lance now march up to their door and tell her mother what Ruth had done, and demand that they move out that same day as well? Lance hated her. Ruth was sure of that. She had thought being pregnant was the worst thing that could have happened to her, but this was far worse. She stayed home from school on Monday. Lu Ling became increasingly fearful that a ghost was trying to take her daughter away. Why else was Ruth still sick? Lu Ling rambled about bony teeth from a monkey's jaw. Precious auntie would know, she kept saying. She knew about the curse. This was punishment for something the family had done a long time ago. She put the sand tray on a chair by Ruth's twin bed, waiting. Both of us die? She asked, or only me? No, Ruth wrote. All okay. What okay? Then why's she sick? No reason? On Tuesday, Ruth could not stand her mother's fussing over her any longer. She said she was well enough to go to school. Before opening the doors, she looked out the window, then down the driveway. Oh no, the Pontiac was still there. She was trembling so hard she feared her bones might break. After taking a deep breath, she darted out the door, scooted down the side of the driveway farther from the cottage, then edged past the Pontiac. She turned left, even though school was to the right. "Hey, Squirt, I've been waiting for you." Lance was on the porch, smoking a cigarette. "We need to talk." Ruth stood rooted to the sidewalk, unable to move. "I said we need to talk. Don't you think you owe me that? Come here." He threw the burning cigarette onto the lawn. Ruth's legs moved shakily forward. The top half of her was still running away. When she reached the top of the porch, she was numb. She looked up. "I'm sorry," she squeaked. The quiver in her chin shook open her mouth, and sobs burbled out. "Hey, hey," Lance said. He looked nervously down the street. "Come on, you don't have to do that. I wanted to talk so we could have an understanding. I just don't want this to ever happen again, okay?"
So, very briefly, my first pick was book number 3, and my second pick was book number 2. My third pick was book number 1, and my fourth and last pick was book number 4. So now I'm just going to show them to you in the order in which I ranked them. And again, I'm really streamlining the comments here. So my first pick was Graham Swift's Waterland, and this was the page that was about some kind of, it sounded like an inquest with the dialogue that somebody had died or a boy had died or something. And I love Graham Swift, so I already knew that. And I just thought the writing was typically magnificent, and I was drawn into the story just from one page. My second pick is Philip Roth's Portnoy's Complaint. This was the story about the guy with his parents and telling the Jewish joke, and Philip Roth is Jewish, so he can get away with that kind of joking around, I suppose. I just love the energy of this. I didn't know how I felt about reading a whole book by him. I haven't ever taken on that challenge, but I was swept up by the writing. Not sure I can deal with the misogyny, the reputed misogyny of his writings, but the writing was fantastic. My third pick was Penelope Lively's novel, How It All Began. This didn't really grab me particularly. I thought it was well written enough, but the thing that Delia was kind of struggling with didn't sound like anything that I was going to lose any sleep over. Finding out how that turned out seemed like she was interviewing somebody for something, and I didn't find her sorting through that, trying to make a decision about that very gripping. The writing was fine, but this one in particular didn't really grab me. And finally, my fourth and last pick was The Bonesetter's Daughter by Amy Tan. This was the page about that was kind of mysterious. What was going on with this seemingly a young woman with a Chinese mother was Chinese, witnessing some guy next door driving somebody somewhere, and it was confusing. And again, the point of the page 112 thing is not to understand what's going on, but just to see how you like the writing. And I didn't love the writing, but the story did kind of grab me. So those were my 4, and now you will see the rest of my vlogging or whatever, reporting back on the Try a Chapter tag for the 4. No more after the fact revisions or additions from here on in, folks. Thanks for your patience, and you can thank me in the comment section for squeezing it down and eliminating at least most of the verbosity. Okay, so it's maybe about a week later, I'm not sure, and I have read quite a few more pages of Waterland by Graham Smith, and it has enthralled me all the more. I started on page 106, and I read chapter 10, which is titled About the Question Why, and it starts out very philosophical. I don't know who's speaking, but it's a very intellectual kind of philosophical, the philosophy of history type of thing that actually did hold my interest more than I would have expected, and this sentence captured my imagination. I taught you that there is never any end to that question. The question about why. Why is history important? I taught you that there is never any end to that question, because, as I once defined it for you, yes, I confess a weakness for improvised definitions. History is that impossible thing, the attempt to give an account
with incomplete knowledge, of actions themselves undertaken with incomplete knowledge. I think that's profound. That speaks to me. And then it goes very quickly after what I've just read to you into something that I'm not going to describe in detail because it's a bit of a spoiler, potentially, about a history teacher whoever's writing this says got their own history kind of come back and bite them in the butt. It was something that seemed rather scandalous that happened to his wife. And I won't describe that because I don't need to, but it certainly sounded interesting. And then right up to and a little bit past the page 112 that I read, and again, to give more details would be a spoiler for many a reader, so I won't give details. We knew that the boy who died drunk was 16, and I got a lot more of the background about that, what the accident was, and who the man that potentially could have been blamed or could have been in some way liable for the accident, and that was all just fascinating. So yeah, this is I'm as enthusiastic, if not more, about this than I was. Hello, I'm Sean the Book Maniac. Let me take off my mask. Hey, well, I just had to make a little bit of this video outside because this is the first break in about 7 or 9 days of uninterrupted rain, 24 hours a day or almost close to that. So anyway, here I am to check in again on Portnoy's Complaint, which I read the next 10 pages after page 112, and the writing is just so damn good. I still am not sure that I wouldn't get tired of the macho shitheadedness of the narrative, but oh my goodness, it's just breathtakingly fabulous prose. So rather than make a big long commentary, I'm just basically echoing what my reaction was to page 112 is the same after reading 10 pages. Hey, so I have read about 10 pages of this. I noticed that page 112 was the second page of a chapter, so I went to the page before and read chapter 8. I didn't finish chapter 8, but I read about 8 or 9 pages and I stopped. I am glad that I read more of it because it's not grabbing me at all. And I had to, when I looked at the back synopsis, when I read you the page 112, I thought, no, the story itself doesn't grab me. The writing is fine, but I think there's a very good chance, depending on how my reaction to the longer section that I read of my fourth pick, this book I think I might unhaul. I have Moon Tiger, I want to read it, and this one, it has a 3.5 rating on Goodreads. Some of my friends gave it 4 stars. There was one hilarious 1-star review that said it was just one of the most boring novels that they'd ever read. But it seems really episodic and comic, and not a whole lot of what I'm reading or reading that it's about is grabbing me. So I didn't find what I read objectionable or all that or boring, but it just didn't grab me. I did get more about what was happening on page 112, and I'm not going to do any spoilers, but there is a monologue by that guy that was kind of auditioning for something, and I won't give you any more details about it, but he does a little bit of a riff on history in a very pedantic way, is pontificating about that butterfly in the Amazon forest that flaps its wings, that sets off a chain of reactions that causes a tornado in Texas. And I think that is probably a central metaphor for this novel, that it starts with a woman being mugged, breaking her hip, and then her daughter can't go with her boss to his lecture, traveling somewhere to give a lecture, and that affects this character and that character, and I think that's what she's up to. But look at all the books I have that I could read. I may hang on to this, thinking that I might try it 4 or 5 years down the road, or I may just make space on my shelf for something that is actually grabbing me by the collar and go directly to Moon Tiger. And I may just keep it, read Mood Tiger, and then decide. But no, this, I think, depending on what I think of my fourth pick, I would probably slot this at the bottom of the 4, but let me have a read of a longer section of the other one, and then I will decide. Hey, it's Monday morning, and I have now read quite a few more pages in The Bonesetter's Daughter by Amy Tan, and yeah, I'm so glad I did. In fact, I started at the bottom of, I want to get those lilacs. Are those lilacs? Those purple flowers? I started at the bottom of page 111, and I really connected 10 times more with page 112 on a reread than I did the first time. And then I kept reading to the end of that chapter. And so I'm not going to give any spoilers, just to say that I now know that, oh God, what's the character's name? I now know that Ruth is a maybe teenager, but certainly at the oldest. She might be 12 or 14 or 16, but no older than 16. And so that contextualizes her a lot more. And no spoilers, but I actually came to really care about her and be invested in her when, starting on the very next page, an encounter between her and that man that drove the other woman away and didn't come back and came back alone, whatever his name was, and my emotions got aroused. So because of that, I think this book is going to move way up on the ranking of the 4, but I'm going to think about it over the course of today and do some final thoughts with an updated ranking, but I think there's going to be an upset.
All right, so let's put this video to bed, shall we? I have been thinking about it for about a week, and here is the new order. As I foreshadowed, quite an upset. Number 1 is still Graham Swift's Waterland, my first pick, definitely. The biggest upset is that The Bonesetter's Daughter by Amy Tan has now moved to number 2. I value emotional engagement above anything else, and that is usually directly linked to the writing, but it could also be linked to other aspects of the novel. But if I am emotionally hooked, that is the primary thing that I care about. So reading a longer section of Amy Tan got me emotionally engaged with the story, so it is now number 2. Number 3 is now Portnoy's Complaint. I still think the writing here is absolutely incredible, but I didn't get emotionally involved in it, and I think I might get tired of the macho BS of the story and the main character, so I can't not give it a try because the writing is fantastic. And down to number 4, poor Penelope Lively, How It All Began. I am not going to decide. I have not yet decided, so whether to keep it or unhaul it or whatever, but it's definitely the 4th pick, having done further investigation. This was fun and very useful. Thanks for watching.